I said, I'm gonna self-compile it.
I don't see it.
Original is first. I worked 67. And I'm at 57 as of Tuesday this afternoon. This week.
Can it be a image?
Could be on there.
Oh, what I say?
Put a wavy one up. There you go, perfect.
Oh my gosh.
That'll work. See if I can find it. It's not that good.
That too.
That'll work, it's fine.
Cool. I did, and I zoomed in.
You all set up?
I think it's something for you to sign.
I guess,
Right now, or when do I do?
we have to go someplace else quickly.
Oh, it's
Bring
something.
up the minutes. or
If I
follow
read
these
it right.
through?
Yeah, if you. What is it? I just Googled it. Wavy flag.
Oh, I forget what it was. Oh, the end. I should be sent these to you, bro.
Press control and back up.
It's gonna be the organization meeting. So I just clicked on it. So we're just gonna go to view agenda.
Did you zoom in at all?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. You just follow along there.
Not that
How do
much.
I, this thing will go,
Yeah, it'll go wherever you want.
And then.
how do I,
Just click.
can you help me say
The
the
control
just
is in.
click,
Just press down.
like where, right, down over
So
here?
Sorry,
you
AJ.
wanna check. Let's say you want to go to A. And then click. Right there. Boom. See the change?
We can't find it.
And then if you want to scroll down on that.
Just go this way, what's that going?
Do it in the middle. You want to
Oh,
get the
middle.
get the mouse over there.
That's going, what's happening?
So you can follow along that way if you'd like. Or you can follow along. right now.
I'll probably follow this because I've had trouble with this already.
All right.
I had to practice. it. Okay.
So
Right, that's
this
it.
This will be the organizational meeting. This will be the first one.
Okay. I
need that.
Follow.
Sorry,
And then
AJ.
this will be- we'll
Oh.
adjourn
Who do I
this
give this
meeting.
to after we meet?
You give it to me
This will be-
directly.
I vote.
Oh, my God.
Directly right after, very fast.
Wow.
Kyle will call your name.
Put it right in my
Call your
pocket.
name. You'll say. yes.
Like to call this organizational board meeting to order. Mr. Kiffer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford,
Here.
Mrs. Campbell,
Here.
Mr. Fulton,
Here.
Mr. Grimm,
Here.
Mr. Violi.
Here, please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To
the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item number 2. Actually. Yeah, item number 2, election of officers and oath of office for the new board members. So we'll do the oath of office first.
Take this with me.
Yes.
Yes.
Say I will. I hereby affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that I will act in accordance with the laws governing my services, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as member of the Streetsboro City School District Board of Education. Sworn and subscribed before me on the 13th day of January 2022.
I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Fulton, please raise your right hand, and you can respond, "I will." I hereby affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that I will act in accordance with all laws governing my services, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as member of the Streetsboro City School District Board of Education, sworn and subscribed today, January 13th, 2022.
I will.
Congratulations. Sign both of these.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's official.
Official.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item B, nomination and election of 2022 board president. As president pro temp, I'm requesting for nominations for board president.
I'd like to nominate Brian Violi for board president.
We have no
I'll second.
We have no further nominations. Ask that nominations be closed and that our treasurer pull the board by roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion carried. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we got to go through this thing again.
Yes. You know the drill. I hereby affirm that I support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that I will act in accordance with all laws governing my services, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as president of the Streetsboro City School District Board of Education, sworn to and subscribed before me on this 13th day of January 2022.
I will.
You sign. Yep, you sign. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Item D, nomination and election of 2022 board vice president. As president, I request that we have nominations for the board vice president.
I nominate Tracy Campbell for board vice president.
I'll second.
We have no further nominations. I ask that the nominations be closed and that our treasurer pull the board by roll call vote.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes. Motion carried. Congratulations.
I don't know whether to say thank you.
I'll try not to be absent. I'll try not to be
Don't be
absent.
absent.
Raise your right hand, your other right. I hereby affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, that I will act in accordance with all laws governing my services, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties as Vice President of the Streetsboro City School District Board of Education, sworn to and subscribed before me on this 13th day of January 2022.
I will. Thank you.
Me too.
You're welcome.
Moving on to organizational business, item A. Is recommended during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education hold its regular meetings on the second Thursday of each month at 5:30 at Streetsboro High School in accordance to the following schedule. We have a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any,
I will be not available on February 10th, just so you know.
I just want to mention that our meetings were being held at 6 o'clock and we're moving them back to 5:30 so that we can try to get home a little at a normal time. So I appreciate everybody agreeing to doing the 5:30 start time. No further conversation, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item B is recommended it is recommended that during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education hold its fiscal year end, hold its regular fiscal year end fiscal meeting at Streetsboro High School in accordance to the following schedule.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item number C is recommended that during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education hold its regular strategic planning meeting at a location,
Yeah.
date and time to be determined.
I'll move.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Do we have an idea of when that's going to be or just on call of the president?
Yeah.
I can answer that. So we discussed with Mr. Violi a little bit about strategic planning and how that would look and what would take place. And part of that discussion was there's an administrative retreat that the admin team does every year. And the thought was that maybe on the second day of that retreat for an hour or so, the board would be able to attend that and have it as a strategic planning meeting with all admin team. And maybe there could be a little Q&A, access to the principles and plans for the year and things of that nature to discuss. So I believe that was the discussion, right, Mr. Violi, that we were determining potentially doing, and we were going to set that up with Mrs. Devers and a few others to get that ball rolling. But we didn't have the date locked down yet for that admin retreat. It's typically in August, a week or two before school starts.
That is correct. The one thing I forgot to mention about the regular meeting dates, if you noticed in there was not a board walkthrough meeting. And the discussion on that was that we could potentially on August 11th meeting, we would have the principals come and make a presentation to the board at our regular meeting and spend maybe 5 minutes with a PowerPoint presentation or something of that sort. And it would be nice for the community to be able to see that as well as opposed to us traveling around that day and looking at the buildings. So I thought that was something that we would get a lot out of actually. And this kind of came out of that discussion.
Yes, it did. It was more to focus on what educationally was going to be happening in the building that year.
Yeah. And it's a long day. I mean, everyone's getting ready for school to start. It's a long day and night for them.
And then you make it one day instead
Yep.
of a meeting on Wednesday and a meeting on Thursday.
Perfect.
No,
So those were the thoughts that we came up with as we were brainstorming a little bit.
any questions or further discussion? Mr. Gifford, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item D is recommended during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education hold its 3 finance committee meetings at the Technology House in accordance to the following schedule.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, this is new for this year, and I'm really excited to get the ball rolling with this. And Finance Committee is something that I'd like to put together with myself, a couple board members, and then community members, either various business people around the area, to get more familiar with the schools and the finances and the operations and how the finances flow through that. And so if you know anybody that would be interested in almost like liaison FYI information to the community, these are the 3 dates. Wouldn't be too long, and they can contact me directly.
And this is not an official board meeting, correct?
Correct, this is not.
So there will be probably 2 members of the board attend and then some community members, so that it is not,
Correct,
official board meeting.
correct.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes,
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to item E, it is recommended that during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education hold a working session at the Streetsboro Annex from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on January 22nd, 2022.
I'll move.
I'll second. We have a first and a second discussion.
I will just say there's a wrestling tournament there that day, so the parking lot might be a little crowded,
We can park.
but we have plenty of
Transportation.
space
Yeah.
to meet. So,
And this meeting is really a work session for the board as it sits now, and with the 2 new board members. We thought it would be a good opportunity to be able to, set some guidelines and show you, discuss any questions that you might have. We do have somebody officially coming to put that meeting on for us.
Yeah, so generally, it's a board orientation. is
Great.
really
It's
what it
very
is.
much that, yes.
Thank you.
No further discussion, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Violi,
Yes,
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
yes,
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
motion carried. Item F. It is recommended that during calendar year 2022, the Board of Education follow the order of business listed below. We have a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? This is the same procedures that we've done for many years.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same order, so. Mr. Gifford, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
yes,
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item G. It is recommended that the following be the board liaisons to the superintendent, treasurer, and chief business officer for 2022 with membership as listed below.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
yes,
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item H is recommend the Board of Education members be compensated for attending meetings and attendance of professional development activities in accordance with Resolution 2003-1-6 as adopted at the 2003 organizational meeting. I'll move.
I'll second.
We have First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Violi,
Yes,
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
yes,
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
motion carried. Moving on to item I, it is recommended the Board of Education establish a service fund for 2022 in the amount of $10,000.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Just for the benefit of our new board members and the public, could you explain what that's for?
Yes, this is, Mr. Scarpino can come in as well, but this is ORC setting aside for our tank, which is operates near the, what house is that?
Central services.
Central-
It's
I'm
the- it's for
sorry.
the underground. tank,
Underground
for the-
tank.
For the fuel tank for the bus.
Yeah. There's a variety of stuff that's just ORC that needs to be.
And you
passed.
have to have that when you have the tank in case something happens with that tank.
Thank you. No further discussion. Please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
yes,
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to item J. It is recommended the Board of Education renew its membership in the Ohio School Boards Association for calendar year 2022, marking the board's 66th consecutive year of membership.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? I would just say 66 consecutive years. It's a long time. And I would say out of the information that I've gathered through OSBA has been valuable, even more so than the NSBA that is the national one. I would say that Ohio School Boards Association has their stuff together. So they do put on a good conference for us and provide us with a lot of valuable information. So no further discussion, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to item K, it is recommended the Board of Education participate in the Ohio School Board Association Legal Assistance Fund for calendar year 2022.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
Just for the new board members, this is pretty standard procedure year after year. There are a variety of different organizations in the Columbus area that reach out for legal assistance fund to kind of defend board members and boards. And this is the one that the district has chosen year after year.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item L is recommended that Robert Fulton serve as the board's official legislative liaison for calendar year 2022.
I'll move.
I'll
Second.
second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item M. It is recommended that Robert Fulton serve as the board's official academic liaison for calendar year 2022.
I'll move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item N is recommended that Kristen Bedford serve as the board's official representative to the Streetsboro Tax Incentive Review Council for calendar year 2022.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
First and second, any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item O is recommend the Board of Education designate the following firms or their successors or assigns as legal counsel for calendar year 2022 on an as-needed basis by the board superintendent and or treasurer.
Mr. Violi, can you please add
And
Chief Business Officer?
absolutely. And the chief business officer.
Always forgot.
My bad, I missed that one on the agenda, sorry.
He makes you sit at the end of the table too.
Hey,
Always in a
I'll move.
We have a motion.
Second.
Yeah.
In a second.
Got him.
Any discussion?
Yes, this does not mean that we use all of these attorneys. This is just at our disposal if we need, depending on specialty and areas of focus.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item P is recommend the Board of Education adopt the following standing authorizations to allow for the efficient management and full execution of duties as set forth below. You should have read those.
I'll move.
I'll
We
second.
have- We have a first and a second. Any discussion?
We explain for the new board members what that means.
these are authorizations given to the superintendent, myself and Kyle, that we're able to continue on with district business without having to conduct a meeting of the board every
Yes.
time a decision needs to happen, or a bill needs to get paid, or a fund transfer needs to occur. The things that the board needs to vote on still come to the board as a vote, and everything still happens as normal.
Yeah, and a lot of these comply with our job duties and responsibilities as well.
Correct.
Correct.
And are backed by ORCs.
Yep.
Great
Thank you.
explanation.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item number 4. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
With first and second, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Meeting is adjourned. We will be moving on to the regular board meeting as soon as everybody gets that loaded up in their computer. Do we need a flag again? Hmm?
Ops failure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't have a paper one. So.
Brian, do you want to put your
Thing in your name.
Do we have to check that thing outside again?
Yeah, I will actually go check that before. Mr. Violi. Would you like me to go?
Let's see if we have it again.
I might. For first round. I'll buy tickets for everybody if we want to.
I'll let you know.
I'll send a message out to get like a head count and stuff. That might be nice to do that. That's what I thought.
No, we do not.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
I'd like to call this regular board meeting to order. Mr. Kiffer, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Here.
Oh, here. I meant to say here. I said
Here.
yes. Sorry.
Mr. Violi.
Present.
I was just continuing the meeting from before.
Please
So was
stand
I.
for the pledge. Ms. Campbell, please lead.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Aye,
Captain.
You said we don't have fun here.
We have no one signed up for public comments, correct?
Correct.
And we will move on to item number 2, approval of minutes. We recommend the Board of Education approve the minutes from December 9th, 2021 as submitted.
I will move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Moving on to item number 3, reports. And since our superintendent is not here today, we do not have a superintendent's report, but I'm sure Kai will make up for that with what he has on his. So we're going to move on to the treasurer's report.
Got it.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Mr. Violi.
7 minutes, Kyle.
So for today, I have 3 things to talk about. I will turn my microphone off. Now I will use this. We'll go through the December general fund, the alternative tax budget for fiscal year 23, which I'm already thinking about. And then information, good news from the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. So basically, this is the general fund activity for December. We had revenues of roughly, yes.
Can you make that larger, please?
Yeah. I like to put it by PDF. We had receipts of 418,000. That's through 2 state foundation payments, preschool payments, and athletic fees. We had expenditures of a little bit over 2 million from 2 biweekly payrolls, supplemental payouts in December, special education payments, transportation payments, and various utility payments. So the monthly deficit for the month is a little bit over $1.6 million. And we had a general fund cash balance of $6.3 million. Now, don't be alarmed that the monthly deficit was as big as it is. This is standard in school finance. So we receive our typically our revenues in August and February or March, and that's really big influxes, which you'll see. So there is a period of 5 or 6 months where we run a pretty substantial deficit, but we do know that, and that's the nature of property tax collections within the county. And this is just a 4-year, I go back to fiscal year 2019, just so you can see where we've been and hopefully where we're going toward the future as well. So I'm going to move on to the alternative tax budget for fiscal year 23. A part of my role, and I really do believe in this, is to educate the board and the public about just by the riveting stuff within the Ohio Revised Code. And so the alternative tax budget is due on the 15th or before of January for school districts and the city of Cincinnati, but let's just talk about school districts. So what does the alternative tax budget do? What does that mean? And there's the Ohio Revised Code section if you want some nighttime reading. So really it gives the county auditor information that, hey, we're still here and we're going to operate for next year. It helps them assess the millage, especially in the bond retirement fund, so Fund 002. And then it goes beyond the standard general fund that I talk about frequently, especially within the forecast. The forecast given in May and November focuses strictly on the general fund. So alternative tax budget really gives to the county and gives treasurers a tool to be like, all right, where are we right now? And then where do you think we're going to be in the future? And to the right is everything that I report. It's basically all of our funds. And the reason why the first 5 are split up is that those are the ones that receive the public's money. So we thank the taxpayers for their support and their support going forward. And the last 4, special revenue funds, proprietary funds, fiduciary funds, and agency funds, each has a special definition. We don't have to get into it now, but it's basically a cluster of funds that I budget for with administrators, with principals, assistant principals, and that process typically begins in March for the next fiscal year. And all of these funds are audited on an annual basis, which I'll probably get to in February. So this today in the resolution that you'll see in my recommendations, the board gives me the authority to submit it to the county. So let's get into some very good information for me to share today. So there will be a resolution for the board. I'm hoping you already got to see it. But basically, it is the completion of the project of the beautiful buildings that we built a number of years ago. So the date of the execution of this building project for the beautiful high school we're in right now, the renovation of the middle school, and the renovation of the elementary school, it really started on March 19th, 2014. That was the execution of the contract. And yes, there has been a lot of time since 2014 and 2022, but it does require a lot of work, especially with that accounting side. So what you're going to be voting upon and what Mr. Violi will be signing, hopefully, if it's voted upon, yes, is the completion of that project. And I will explain and give you some more details. So this, yes,
I just wanted to, if you can go back a minute to that last one.
yes,
I know during the building project, the state share was 35%,
yes,
but I wanted to say that there were people that were here before all of us, I think, that had the forethought of locking in at that 35% rate. Because we would have been more like at an 18 or 19% state share if we didn't do that, previous administrators and boards before us. So I just want to say, thank them for that forward thinking, putting that in place before we even had a chance to put this on. So I just thought that was important to
that's
mention.
great. It's great information that I did not know. So thank you, Mr. Violi. So this is the resolution that you will see. There's a variety of funds we'll be talking about today, and it gives the some of the Ohio Revised Code sections that I don't need to spew off now. But the resolution that will be voted upon gives me the authority to officially close the project. And so within the resolution, I specifically have stated, look at Exhibit A to this resolution. So here's the quick details of the project. So when I came here, April, I have an auditing side with the state auditors of Ohio after 10 years. So I feel comfortable with fund balances and all of the funds. And this is something that I've seen in my audit career. But so I was able to submit records starting back in June. This has been a multi-month process. So working with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, Ray and Associates, who did the reconciliation, as well as Hammond Construction, the following steps stemming from the district's construction project, and now we're closing that. So what does that mean? When we had the building project, we really opened a couple funds, and today we're going to be closing Fund 010. So I'm just going to say Fund 10. Fund 10 started around the building project, and we are closing that, or you're giving me authority to close that this month. And there is a variety of calculations and details that the OFCC, as well as their accounting firm that they hired, Ray and Associates, take our information and take the construction information and see if there's any differences, and we talk about that. And there was a project completion reconciliation agreement between that I signed to get to this process before the resolution between Hammond Construction and us, because they're basically saying, yes, Streetsboro, you're good. You're good. Let's close this project. And so we're going to, you'll hear some numbers, and I hope I make myself clear, and please ask me any questions if I don't. So the long story short is that how Mr. Violi related it to is that we received so much millions of dollars from the project to build these facilities. So in that time, the treasurer's office was booking interest every single month since 2014, really. And so a part of that is that the OFCC, a part of that 35% agreement, was like, okay, now it's closed. We have to have our share that you've been holding for us during that time. So we will cut a $272,848.94 check to the OFCC that's been in our Fund 10, basically just accruing interest over time. And after that, after we we cut this pretty large check. Remember, this isn't money that the public has given. This is money that the public has voted on and given us and collected interest on. So after we cut that check, I'm like, okay, cool. We settled things with OFCC, but what about our part in terms of the Ohio Revised Code? So with a balance, our share of interest is, because it's a larger share, it is $468,365.81. Since we are closing this Fund 10, where does this money go to? Well, per Ohio Revised Code, we are going to put that $468,000 into the Permanent Improvement Fund going forward for our facilities and to improve, obviously, the assets of our district. So that's where one of the transferred funds are going. It's not a check, it's a transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 003, our Permanent Improvement Fund. So there's still a remaining balance in Fund 10. Our goal here is to close it. So we have a $274,002.42 balance remaining after we've done something with our interest that goes to OFCC, then goes to our Permanent Improvement Fund. That balance of $274,000 doesn't go to the general fund. It doesn't go to Permanent Improvement Fund. It actually goes to Fund 004, which was a corresponding fund, a part of the building project. So with that activity, we put it into 004. So these numbers are accurate as of today. I did say about the Fund 003. This is where the $468,000 goes. And then Fund 004. And what I like to do, and maybe this is just me, but I really like to clean up some accounting stuff that has really been sitting there for a few years because the building project wasn't closed. So there is the way in accounting, we call it special cost center. So we're moving that into cost center 9017 to 9014. So we have a balance of $110,281.75. Then we are adding the closure of Fund 10. So our total fund for 004 will be $384,284.17. And with all that magic accounting and transfers, we will officially be at zero in Fund 10. So that was, you'll be voting on transfers for that as well. We're not done yet. Because a part of the building project, there was a lot of different buckets that you had to take because of the 35%, because of the 65%. So because of the building project, there was an escrow account, there was an investment account, and there was basically a standard account, bank account that we had to open. The resolution gives me the authority to close those accounts as well. Again, accounting cleanup after the project. And so what's really important here is, oops, sorry. So the information that's really important is that we're closing Fund 10, and that's great. But that's only, it's an accounting procedure. So one thing to note is that all of what I'm talking about today, closing the building project, I am not talking about any salaries or benefits. Legally, Ohio Revised Code, we cannot use any of what I said for today for salaries and benefits when talking into the general fund. So now with the closure, which will be closed by the end of the month, now we go kind of back in line for OFCC. Now, OFCC was started in 1996, and I talked to their liaisons today. They really haven't had a district yet go through the big building project, and then wait a period of 20, 25 years, and then go through another building project. But it gets us in line for future boards, for future kids that are going to be educated through Streetsboro. And with that, do you guys have any questions? I hope I was clear giving some of the fund transfers and the fund accounting procedures.
So this is showing how the funds that were voted on and provided by the state they've been used legally, they've been separated properly, and now you're just closing up, we're taking our share, they're getting theirs. And then, what you said at the end is, now we're back in line for maybe another future round of funding.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then thank you, Mr. Grimm, for, in addition to that, is that since we did these transfers, we know how much money is going where. We're cutting the check to OFCC. Now it gives the cleanup. Now we know going forward for myself, for Mr. Scarsapino, for Mr. Johansson, is that now we can start really getting into the details and developing clear plans when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to capital improvements and permanent improvements. But again, I don't want to be out of my league because that is Mr. Scarsapino's arena. But in finance, we'll be able to work together for that going forward.
But we're planning now to make sure that we have enough money to maintain our buildings, is what that is.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And we've already developed a capital planning team amongst us internally, and I've already sent out the meeting date, and we'll be meeting. Myself, Kyle, Andreas, Elena Links.
Great.
To start
There's also
focusing in
another
and-
fund
and
that-
creating
That kind of
at least a 5-year plan.
follows your question.
Okay.
When we had the bond issue that was approved, there was a 0.5 mil, and it was like a permanent improvement portion
That's
of
the
that
034.
bond that's used for keeping up on these buildings that
Yes.
we just built.
Mhm.
So you can only use that money on the buildings that were built in the building project. So there's a decent amount in that fund as well, right?
Decent amount. There was a 200 and for a period of years, I believe it's like 10 or 15 years. It just happened in November. It's those receipts from that 0.5 is deposited into our permanent improvement fund. And then the board approves a transfer according to our OFCC agreement of 206,000 into the classroom facilities of 034. And permanent improvement is, there's some, the fund 003, when I say permanent improvement, basically there are less rules. It's like anything over 5 years. There's a lot more to that. But in fund 034, we can only spend on assets built with the project fund. So it's a little bit more detailed than we have an asset list. And we've developed really good procedures so far that really excel. So it's not, where's the money coming from? Is it permanent improvement? Is it 034? We've developed those procedures and it's been working out really well.
I would agree. And what we did with that 034 fund, when I was in this treasurer's seat, and now we built a good balance in that account for a reason, because we have new buildings, but when something goes wrong, it'll probably go wrong in all of them. So our target goal was to get about $1 million in that account. And then at that point, we look at when the $200,000 transfers in, and we're at that million. So now we're at 1.2, how to spend that 200,000 amongst those buildings throughout the year. You may not need to use all 200,000, but we can use it on things like our HVAC contract, only for 3 buildings, not for DEFR, not for the annex, not for the board office, but it's a smarter way to spend, but also still build up a balance in case a building needs a roof or a boiler or something like that. We have that little bit of cushion instead of spending it immediately when the transfers happen.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Great report, there,
Yeah.
Mr. Keffer. Moving on to Chief Business Officer's report.
Okay, I'd like to invite Mr. Johansson in his neon to the stage. In the operations department, we're always trying to be more efficient and effective with everything. We question everything we do to see if there's a better way. A couple things we're going to present to you tonight are some of those better ways. So Mr. Johansson's going to first present about the school messenger all-call system. Obviously, that's a hot topic. There's a lot of all-calls going out. Where are they coming from? How are they getting out? What's that look like? Andreas?
I feel like Mr. Kiffer destroyed our display unit. But we won't blame it fully on him. It's probably an early day, so in operations, we try to help out. I think our day started today at 5:15. Thank you, Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
for the wake-up call by rerouting 2 buses. Thank you, Amanda, due to a house fire. And so that's when the day started, and then we go from there. So just some quick updates today for you from the operations team, and we'll end with the sort of excellent news from our transportation department. But we wanted to share a little bit about how we communicate as a district, because it's vital in order for us to get messages out to our families. And if nothing else, for the exciting event as a snow day, we want to make sure everyone knows. We have used it quite extensively over the last couple of months for COVID notifications, maybe school closures, route cancellations, and transportation. We find that it works fairly well, but we found a flaw where we don't have the best information. And so, like CJ said, when we find that out, then we do better. So I've worked for the last couple of weeks to fix that, to get the best information that we possibly can. So School Messenger is the system that we use. It's a third-party vendor to the district. It's a paid service. It's excellent. I think I made a board presentation a couple of years ago when we switched from our old service. The old all-call system would take up to a half hour, sometimes 40 minutes to dial everyone in the district. Our new system, School Messenger, dials 5,000 contacts in less than 7 minutes and delivers it out. Text messaging is instantaneous for the most part. If you send more than about 10,000, then it slows down to about a minute. So works really, really well. This was our old workflow in terms of how to get data into School Messenger. So I spend an enormous amount of time in spreadsheets. I enjoy that. I feel I'm fairly proficient at it. But when you're trying to find data then from our community members, from our students, and then, okay, now what's mom's phone number? What's dad's phone number? Do they have an email? Things like that. It can get a little bit messy if you have multiple steps. So our old flow was we would get the information from the parent. The parent would put information into a system called Final Forms, which we use for student registration, athletic events. You can make custom things happen in there. We collect a lot of our like permission forms. We have our technology agreement, things like that. That's what the district uses to essentially do away with a lot of paper. What it creates for us is an excellent database. It's also the system where we can push out to parents to say, we don't have all the information that we would like. You haven't signed this form. We need updated so-and-so. So we do that on a daily, not a daily basis, on a yearly basis. And much thanks to Mrs. Stockard, who she might have left. There she goes. Mrs. Stockard at the board office, who helps us manage that sort of on an annual basis to make sure that it pushes out. So parent inputs into Final Forms. From Final Forms, it then dings or communicates over to our front offices. And so we have a couple of front offices. And as you know, school it's a dynamic environment. So they get really, really busy. And so what we found was that we didn't always get the good data transfer from Final Forms into eSchool, which is our student information system. That's where we would love to have up-to-date data. Unfortunately, eSchool is limited to the amount of data that it'll hold. And so it's only available to sort of hold 1 or 2 phone numbers for a contact, 1 or 2 email addresses. And so it doesn't really allow us to store as much data as we want. And it's a manual process then to take it from Final Forms, manually input it into eSchool. We found a lot of flaws with data transfer to no fault of anyone's, but that's a manual process. And so it's something that's difficult. So now you're kind of inserting steps. And then eSchool has pushed it to School Messenger through a nightly upload using our ITC, or what's called our data center, Spark, down in North Canton. That has worked okay. We have all the students in there. We can make all call groups. We can get it out, but we're limited to that 1 or 2 phone numbers. We haven't had any data for students. And so I really started looking at, well, what do we have in Final Forms? And in Final Forms, we have all the information under the sun. literally. So if you export that into sort of the master spreadsheet, you get 100 columns worth of data on anything from birth, date of birth, to phone numbers, to home address, to medical history, to are they allergic to peanut butters? Do they like butterflies? Like everything. And so we can then manage that data, massage it, put it where we want it. And so we've started in some of our other departments, transportation being the number one, where we have started to rely on final forms only. And we started skipping eSchool because final forms is more up to date. That is our best source of data. And so the problem set was then how do we get the best data into our calling solution so that we can get a hold of people? So I work with both vendors, Final Forms and School Messenger, and spent some time with them again in spreadsheets, and that's more technical than what we want to talk about today, but it's pretty simple. And so what we did with the new workflow is that we basically cut out the front office in eSchool. And so now, starting last week, data flows from the parents' input to Final Forms. We grab that data, shove it in the School Messenger. And so what we find is that, that'll cut down a little bit on the workload of our front offices. We don't have to really touch yet another automated process that has some flaws in it. And what it yields now is we have up to 8 phone numbers per contact. So for any given student that we have in the district, we have, because we get it from Final Forms, we can have a student cell phone, a home phone, and an email. We can have parent 1 cell phone, home phone, work, and email, parent 2 cell, home, work, and email. We find that a lot of our 6th grade and up, so 6th through high school, we have a listed student cell phone number that is distinct from the parent's number. So we know that those are then student cell phone numbers, which is great, right? And so then this gives us the ability to call, email, text, all of those contacts simultaneously. So do we do that? No. On a regular basis, we have calling groups for what we call the general all call, which would be schools closed for snow, the COVID notification from Mrs. Devers. They'll go to now the parent's cell phone, and that's it, right? So we don't need to bother everyone under the sun in terms of sort of general information. And then we can increase that depending on the severity issue. So if we have a during the school emergency, we're calling all the numbers. So then that bumps the category up a little bit. It'll give us priority on the back end of the networks for telephony, and it'll dial all the numbers, cell phones, home phone numbers, work numbers at the same time to get the message out. We haven't used that yet. That would be, in a real world crisis for the district to try to communicate that out. But so far it's working really, really well. We're going to continue to push out information to our parents, especially for the text notification. Something that's new in the last week, and Mrs. Devers put that out for us, is that a parent will get a text notice along with the voicemail. And that tends to arrive very quickly. But what we find is that a lot of parents they get that phone call at 5 o'clock and then they ignore it. And then they don't listen to it. And then they don't know where it goes, right? It probably leaves a voicemail. But now they also have that text message with the link. They can go click on it. They can even listen to the message from last week if they wanted to. So we're just trying to hit up contacts or parents in as many avenues as we can. Now, parents can always kind of choose out of this, right? So you can turn the text messaging off on your own end, and we have that information on our website. So if you don't want the text messages, unfortunately, it's sort of all or nothing. So if you say, I don't want the text messages, you'll never get them. And the way that the laws are around sort of telephony, SMS protocols, we can still force phone calls to you, but we can't, if you unassign yourself, if you unsubscribe from the text messaging, you won't get the text messages. And for those listening at home, we have a number of people that are on our call block list. Sometimes we find people haven't updated their numbers, and then now we're calling a number down to West Virginia because cell phones get traded or whatnot. Same thing with text messages. If you're not getting a text message and you want to, it's very easy. We can help you subscribe to that. So that's what we did with the School Messenger refresh, and we're hoping to use that to communicate faster and
I
more
want to
effectively.
commend Andreas for this, because this was an area that he was after and wanted it to be more efficient and have the best data available. And when we were in Columbus, I was with him, and we went and seeked out Final Forms to ask if it was possible to do something like this. They said, well, we're not sure. We never have did that. He said, well, we're going to find out together then.
We'll find out.
So he led that charge and probably taught them how to better suit some of the other districts that they service as well. So that did not go unnoticed, that relentlessness in
Yep.
pursuit to this. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
And Andres, I have a question. So on that slide where you rerouted
Yep.
the new, where is the information from eSchool? Is it still sitting out there?
So eSchool is still there.
So you still use that program, just not for the
Yes.
messaging?
So
Okay.
eSchool becomes, that's still our hub for sort of attendance goes there,
Okay.
grade book goes there, things like that. And we still import information from Final Forms there. But we find that with phone numbers and emails, because we prompt with Final Forms to say, hey, update your information. That tends to be the hub then for the most up to date, whereas then we literally would have to manually input that into eSchool.
Okay.
Which then becomes a real chore for 2,000 students to manually do it. And that's just where we're at.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. One of the things that works well, and coming back to transportation, we then tap into School Messenger to build custom groups, and we're gonna keep enhancing that. But the smallest group that we can call today is sort of a single bus for afternoon only from a building. So if we need to get a hold of bus 4 that with only the Henry Deffert kids, we could do that. And so that's super helpful. So if that bus runs late or something happens, we can send a targeted blast home. And then we're looking to improve that so that we could call a homeroom, for example. So if there's something that happens in a specific classroom, we can get a hold of that group of kids. So the School Messenger.
So moving forward here into the ops portal and master calendar. So when Andreas and I took over in these roles, one of the common themes that we heard from building principals, from our facilities folks, from pretty much everybody was, we're not sure when groups are coming to our building or when events are going on in our buildings. We need some help with that communication piece. So we spent a lot of time researching, trying to figure out what the best way is to communicate that with our internal team. What can we create to fix that? And at an earlier board meeting, we shared with you all the ops portal that was built. And we were building calendars that was still under construction and some things like that. Since then, our team has been working diligently trying to get all of the calendars, all the events and everything broken down into one master calendar, but then also there's separate calendars strictly for the annex, for strictly the high school, the middle school, SES, and so on. And so we're, again, always looking to improve. So what are ways to communicate that out? Well, here's the link to the portal, but are you going to check it every single day when you come in? Here's a link to your building. Are you going to check that every day when you come in? Here's an email every day with one of us copy and pasting the calendar into it to make sure we don't miss any events. And we're not perfect. Sometimes, you know, we didn't have that event as knowledge, so we weren't able to put it in the calendar, but we try not to miss. So we were really trying to figure out what the best way to communicate that was. And we were sending some emails out and things like that. And then Andreas took it to a whole nother level.
So one of the concerns for our team that we work with is that we're not all here at the same time. So we have sort of the day shift folks, and then we have our second shift custodians that come in. And again, they may not sit down at their computer to check and sort of, you know, remember for good. Lots of stuff happens. I arrived at the same time here as our second shift custodian, Anthony Sands. And he immediately sort of went into work mode because we were prepping for the board meeting and we're sweeping and picking up garbage or whatever, right? So there's really no time for him to check in. One of the things that's really important for us is to make sure that we know that our team knows that there's basketball today at the high school, or there's volleyball at Henry Deffert, and that stuff is set up and the people can access. And so how do we solve all of that?
And for subs as well, when a sub comes.
For substitutes, right? So we created the ops portal. It's available to them as long as they kind of just log into their Google account, that gets displayed to them. So some of you are on a Chromebook. If any of our team members log in on a Chrome device or in their Google account, that'll pop up immediately. So we try to populate things there, and I'll pull it up live here in a minute to show you. But then what we wanted to take it a step further to say, like, how do we make it so that they can't avoid it, right? So how do we dummy proof it? And so we tie into School Messenger. So we just have a scheduled job, and for our second shift custodian, for our building principals, they all get the same thing at 1 or 2 in the afternoon, depending on the building. They just get a quick text message. It says, hello, CJ, today is the 13th of January. Here's your link to the ops calendar for your building.
Andreas said, I'm done with your daily emails with the calendar.
Yeah.
there's a better way.
So
This
we
is
just-
what we're gonna do.
So we automated. And so then we formatted that to fit your phone because we know that most people pick that up on the phone. And so here's kind of a quick, I know it's small, but kind of a quick way of what it looks like. So this is our master calendar. And it's just a rundown of everything that we know. And CJ and I always, when we meet with our principals and the rest of the teams, athletics, we say, here's our calendar of things that we know about. And so what we did just in the last 2 weeks, we were able to kind of steal a feed from the athletic calendar, bring that into our master feed, if you will, so that we don't have to go to another source because we don't really want to hunt and peck for the information either. I just want it in my pocket. For the ops team, and I included sort of a larger number there, we get it at 8 o'clock in the morning because we're here during the day. And then our second shift team gets it about 1 or 2 in the afternoon so that they know. They don't want it at 8 because they're probably sleeping, they're home with their kids. So we send it to them in the afternoon. So
And can they look out, Andreas? Like this isn't, I know it's just for the day, but can they look further out? I
Yeah.
think that would be
Yeah.
important for our
I'll-
principals, right?
I'll pull it up here. So, in addition to CJ and I, we meet with our principals out in the building, Tuesdays and Fridays, I think it is, we have it, just to kind of check in, like a personal check-in, what's happening. We look ahead. They have access to the calendar. They're all Google Calendar, so they can scroll left and right, so they can check 2 weeks out. And we're asking our principals, hey, you're going to get that message at about 1 or 2 in the afternoon so that you're seeing what's happening this afternoon, but please look ahead too. Same thing with our day shift custodians. Like, you're going to get that message in the afternoon because in the morning it's just school.
Mhm.
So we need you then to look. Here's the portal. We try to build it nice and easy to navigate. So we start with our calendars. Here's our master calendar to feed that has everything that we know of. And it basically just grabs all of these other ones. But we also don't want to overwhelm our users. And so if you're a high school person, you might only want to look at the high school calendar, fields and grounds, district events. We put a bunch of other stuff here, like our tech requests. They can order lunch off of here. They have a contact roster, maps for our spaces. We have our custodial zone maps. And so if, I don't think I'm showing secret information, but if we, and again, we're trying to dummy proof it for our substitutes, if nothing else, our regular second shift, our level 3 custodians, they know their zones. But if I'm coming in and substituting at the high school and now I'm doing the blue zone, I need to know where that's at. So we put those maps. I will say this is always a work in progress. I am always like, I need a better map, but I'm a map person, but we try to make it easy for people to kind of find what they want and find it when they need. And then our future, we're developing checklists then for cleaning protocols and how to do X, Y, and Z. And so it'll all be in one place.
So will this calendar translate into a calendar for the public, for parents?
Potentially.
So I would say,
Because
so
that's been one of the complaints, right? is
Yep.
We
Yes.
don't know when things are happening.
Yeah.
Why can't we have one calendar? And I agree.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we have all the kinks worked out
course.
and that, listen, we're human. We
Oh,
may miss an
absolutely.
event here or there. We're trying our best not to.
Well, and information changes,
Correct.
especially with COVID.
It does.
Things are not
And-
happening that would normally be happening.
And we're working through that. And, we meet with the principals, we meet with athletics every Monday as well to go over calendars. And we're doing a really good job communicating with all groups in order to make sure this is correct.
Sure.
So I think that once we have certain things worked out, there's certain things on there that maybe aren't, the public isn't going to care that there was a
Agreed.
Traversa training in the annex today, for bus software, but that's important to myself, Amanda, and Andreas. But it shows on there because we have a custodian in the annex, and that triggers Phil to open up the bathrooms upstairs and make sure that everything's set. So we're getting there slowly. Our goal would be to try and have something to roll out, hopefully at the beginning of next school year, to where that's there and it's all in one.
It's great. It's great progress. You
Yeah, I
guys
think
have
it's
done a
awesome.
Great job.
I think we're in a good, I would say like a beta product.
Yep.
But it
Yes.
does take, so lots of people put stuff on these calendars as well. And so we want to make sure that that's unified in terms of a format so that we're not just putting on, Jim Bob's meeting and then,
Sure.
oops, that went on the public calendar and now,
Yeah.
it shouldn't have gone there. So we just want to work it out. I think we're in a good shape technologically with the resources, just a matter of.
Yeah, and I think for the public, it's more sporting events, choir concerts, band concerts, but open
Yep.
houses, those
Mhm.
types
Yep.
of things. That would be nice to open one page and know this is
Yep.
where things are
Yeah.
happening.
We
I will-
agree. That's
I
why
know.
we started building
I
this
know.
internally to try and
It's amazing. It's awesome.
eventually get it to that place.
Well, and it's also bad information if, you have to make sure you're getting accurate information week to week. So it's good that you're taking your steps
Agreed.
to make sure that's happening
Yeah.
because
And
bad
we're
information in, bad information out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it still takes, I mean, we meet with athletics Monday morning, then we meet with our principals. It's every meeting. We're like, oh yeah, no, that changed.
Right.
Something happened. This shouldn't have this thing on there. So there, it does take that level of human checking.
Yes.
Um,
And a lot of it's COVID related also because games are moving because of that.
Yes.
In non-COVID times, typically you set a schedule and the games are the games on those days. So, we're starting to, if anything, the communication is going to be at an all-time high when COVID is over because of how we're communicating now and we're learning what the proper ways to do it are.
Okay, facilities, just a quick update. We had a request from our athletics department to basically give the ability to secure some equipment at the middle school field house. And so we worked with a vendor that has done some other fencing around in the district. We drew up the specs. We met with the coaches who this will impact, and it's mostly the middle school football team, middle school track. There was not really a good way to secure equipment over there, sort of long-term or sort of, during the year, because those sports just run for a set period of time. And then there's other people that use the building. So Teese Brothers came out, gave us the best quote, and then built the cages over Christmas break, winter break.
Little TLC going into that building.
Yep. Okay, we're going to bring Amanda up to share with you just sort of that continuous update on how we're doing. And I will say, I'll preface that. Yeah, but she's done an amazing job to roll out the first couple of weeks of school in the spring semester. The work behind the scenes has been no more than tremendous. So
Thank you. You're probably getting a little sick of seeing me up here, but I just wanted to share with you because I had presented at the last two board meetings what our plan was to roll out the new routes and all of that. I wanted to share with you how it went. You may have been hearing from the community, but for the most part, it went really well. I would say we definitely had hiccups like we generally do, similar to the beginning of a school year, where maybe we have some misinformation in final forms. And so we're routing off of that, or maybe we just have a computer glitch, which those happen too. So we got some of that out. Probably the biggest problem that we had was people who did not get the communication for whatever reason that we were changing routes, which surprised me a lot. We communicated it via the school website. The PTA posted it many times. We had it on the transportation link. We emailed it, we blast called it, and we text messaged it about 4 times on all of those platforms. But at the end of the day, we got everybody to school when we came back on January 4th, and even some kids on January 3rd that go to the biomed schools, they got to school. So few kinks, but at the end of the day, they all got there safely. The geographical preference, I had brought that to you saying how we were not necessarily going to always start or end at the middle school or high school so that we could be more efficient. That is going great. It's going really well. Now that we're kind of in sync, our buses are rolling in pretty much at, one right after the other within a minute of each other at each building. And it is causing a lot less cross traffic of the buses on the road. So that makes your routes faster. That being said, we are continuing to adjust our route times. We have some routes that were rolling in right when we thought they would, and other ones that there are other delays, whether it be traffic or student loading delays that just made them getting too late to the schools, to the high school and the middle school. So as we have gone along through last week and this week, we've just been making little tweaks and adjustments here and there. Definitely a work in progress. Some of the reason that it would take longer, I feel that it's important to communicate to everybody the changes as we make them. So I didn't want to just be like, okay, it's Tuesday, we're going to make this route 5 minutes faster. We need to give people time to know the bus is coming sooner, make sure it's communicated, especially on the lower grades. Give parents time to adjust if they have to adjust the stop time. So we're working on it, and we continue to take suggestions for things that we can be doing better. But I would say, and I think CJ would agree, he's been out there directing in traffic every day. Things are getting more efficient every
Absolutely.
single day. Things are getting a little faster in a safe way every single day. So I wanted to share that with you.
I like that, in a safe way.
Yes, that's right. Well, and that's what I'm here for, right?
Yes,
Not just to
absolutely.
get the kids to school, but to get them there safely. So far, goals and future outlooks. So far, I'm almost afraid to say it publicly, no routes canceled since we came back. And that was what the goal was. Does that mean we will never cancel one? No, we're still in a very similar staffing situation. As a matter of fact, I ended up driving today because we had somebody call off in an emergency situation. But we have one of our drivers coming back tomorrow, who's been on a long-term leave. And so hopefully with our one flex driver, Mr. Carl is going to just be driving the whole city of Streetsboro. But you know what? He loves doing it. So that being said, we are continuing to recruit, train, and improve our staffing. I have 2 potential drivers coming in tomorrow to take a tour of the transportation department and for me to talk to them about what it's about. We have 3 people training right now to get their CDL. So all the work that we've been putting in since the beginning of the school year, it's slow and it's arduous, but it is starting to come to fruition. So that being said, I think I don't know, did I write that note? Same amount of riders and a few fewer buses. I guess that probably has to do more to load. If you're hearing it, it's true. Our buses are very crowded. We went from 21 buses to 16 buses with the same number of riders. So especially at the high school and middle school level, but everyone has a seat. Sometimes they're real cramped, but they do have a seat to get to school. And right now that's the best that we can do. Some of the routes are running long and they get home real late, but we're getting them there and we're able to transport them. So I would just ask that the community continue to be patient with us as we add staffing. We will try to load balance some of those loads. We will try to time balance some of those buses and we will do our best, but we just don't want to put ourselves in a negative staffing situation. So that is all I have unless you have questions for me.
I just want to say.
Me too, me
Thank
too.
you so much.
I agree
You've
with
done the transportation department's done a terrific job, and I just want to say thank you because I don't see the calls coming in to us. So that's a tribute to what we're doing on the front end. So thank you very much.
And I think when you work with people, they're a reflection of who they work for. And your drivers have been so kind the last couple of weeks. I know I sent you an email. My 13-year-old commented on how nice their bus driver was. And if anybody has a 13-year-old, you know, that is very odd. So I want to say thank you from our family. I think they're doing a great job and I hope you keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just echo, it's a big change to happen in 2 weeks with the routes and having the complication of people not getting the message. We do have to be patient and give it a minute to work out kinks. So I just want to thank our community for being patient with us, you guys, your drivers, your team, for just doing a great job.
They've done a fantastic job and the task was monumental to get it to where it's at and to have the foresight that Amanda had of this is what we need to do in order to get kids to school. And it's done. Sometimes it looks effortlessly with grace and always great communication. And so her team over there, all of the drivers, Vaughn, I mean, tremendous work.
Mhm.
I couldn't be happier.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, just for the new board members, because I know we rant about school bus all the time, but so the puzzle is how do we get 1,450, so 1,450 kids to school? That's what we're talking about. So that's a huge puzzle, and safety is no joke. We had our highway patrol spot inspector in the other day, and he says, this bus here is not the right shade of yellow. And so that's how serious that the highway patrol takes school bus safety. School buses in Ohio is basically the safest state for school buses. They do an enormous amount of inspections, make sure that we do the things that we're supposed to be doing, to the point where like, yeah, that yellow is not the right yellow.
I think he described it to Jeff as peach, right? That's what Jeff. told
Yeah,
us.
it's too
Yeah.
peachy. It
Said
needs
it's
to be
too
more
peachy.
high gloss. And Jeff is
Yes.
like,
So
come on.
Andreas will be paying.
Was that a
More
sun?
lemon.
bus or-
Yes.
It was.
It's so that bus is, that bus is probably 10 years old. And again, they sit outside. And so the sun beats on them, and you can get a bus painted. And it's just one of those things. It's on their checklist and they check everything. Like they'll check a crack at the back of the bumper, be like, it's more than 1/8 of an inch. So we're gonna need to fix that or you can't drive the bus.
So that bus might be turned into like a tiny home at some point, right?
For sure. And what I think we'll have some, I'm not going to say too much, but I think we'll have some updates next month.
Potentially.
CJ doesn't even know about some of the things, but they are very exciting.
Oh, boy.
Sure.
Just got off the phone earlier, so I can't say, but there you go. Thank you.
You know, if that's the worst thing they found is the shade of yellow was off on a bus. Good for everybody here.
Yeah.
Yes.
For
Right.
keeping up on everything else.
It's not the worst thing, but it's one of the things that they found yesterday.
What Andreas is preparing you for is that he's going to be painting the bus the shade of yellow on his shirt there.
It's not approved. I don't
So when
think.
you see
Never
that
miss
one,
them.
it's
Never
not
miss them.
approved, but
So it's too
that's,
bright.
that might be the color. We'll get written up for a highlighter yellow
Yeah.
at the next inspection. Thank you, Andreas.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Amanda. Great
Thank you.
job tonight. Appreciate you.
Does that conclude your report there,
Yes, sir.
Mr. CJ?
You got it.
Okay, moving on to item number 4, consent agenda items. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through K.
Are we not doing board reports?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to item T instead of item 4. Board reports. Mrs. Campbell, you have a report?
I actually don't have a report, but I figured somebody else might.
There you go.
Somebody else might.
Mr. Grimm.
The only thing I wanted to mention was there's going to be some fundraisers coming up for the high school band as they prepare to go to Disney. So please keep an eye out for that and do what you can to support our band so they can go to Disney and have a great educational experience. I know Mr. Dawson has prepared some great events for them to actually not just go down and have fun, but really have a great learning experience. So do what you can, please, to help support the band, meet their goal to get to Disney.
And Mr. Dawson was in the Rose Bowl.
He was.
He marched in the Rose Bowl parade, correct?
Yes, I just said, I think I saw him, but there were so many people and moving around so fast, but that was awesome.
Their pancake breakfast
What's
is
that
the
pancake?
same morning as our board, as our working session on the 22nd.
What time?
So
What time does
8,
that
it
start?
starts at 8. So we could either, if anyone's interested, I can order tickets. I'll send you guys a message. We want to buy tickets and go before, or I can pick up, carry out if they allow it and bring it with me. Just throwing it out there.
Sounds like a good idea. Okay, and I do not have a report from Maplewood, but I did send the email with the notes from the December meeting. Hopefully, Mr. Fulton and Ms. Bedford, you got those emails, so I'll continue to send those out. And as the restaurant there starts opening back up, I'll send the emails to you
Yes.
that I get from them as well. Okay, and I'm not sure, we didn't put Mr. Fulton or Kristen Bedford on the reports part for the board reports. But if you have anything, I'd like to give you the opportunity.
I don't, thank you.
Okay, now we can move on to item 4, right?
Yep.
Okay. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the consent agenda items B through K. We have a motion.
I'll move.
Second,
We have a first and a second. Any comments or discussion? I just want to mention on item C, the donations that are listed there. Just always want to make sure that we highlight that portion of the consent agenda. So please take a look at the 5 donors there that made donations. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried. Item number 5, we do not have superintendent recommendations today. So we'll move on to item 6, treasurer's recommendations.
Yes, a lot of these recommendations follow my presentation, so just letting you know that. It is a recommendation that the Board of Education approve the revised purpose and budget statements for middle school Rotary Club, sped ed, and the auditorium fund as shown in the attachment.
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and second discussion. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes,
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve in addition to the 21-22 high school fees for National Honor Society of $15.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
First and second, any discussion there?
Yeah, for the new board members at the beginning of the school year, there, every building, especially the high school, has a lot of school fees. And talking to the wonderful Mrs. Dalton about National Honor Society, sometimes the students at this time of the year are fundraised out, given the holidays and the other activities that they're in. And this is, she pulled her students, she understood, they went back and talked to their parents. And this is a nominal fee for cords and membership for National Honor Society.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes,
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve the fund-to-fund transfer of $271.45 from the 572-9021 for Title I Fund to the 572-9022 Title I Fund and the transfers to properly close out the building fund.
I'll move
I'll second.
the first, and I think Ms. Campbell second. Any discussion?
Just again, for new board members, you'll see fund-to-fund transfers time to time. Again, part of that just boring accounting cleanup sometimes.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Violi,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
yes,
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
Motion carried.
It is recommended the Board of Education approve amended appropriations for fiscal year 22 and estimated resources will be adjusted as needed for permanent appropriations.
I'll move.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes,
Mr. Violi,
Yes,
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm.
Yes.
motion carried.
Almost done, guys. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the alternative tax budget for fiscal year, for the correction, fiscal year 2023 as attached and authorize the treasurer to file the document with the Portage County Budget Commission.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell,
yes,
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Violi.
Yes, motion carried.
It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the resolution for the completion of the Classroom Facilities Construction Commission building project.
I'll move.
Second?
We have a first and a second.
Mr. Violi?
Any,
Oh, sorry.
no discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Violi?
Yes,
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mrs. Campbell?
yes,
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
motion carried. Moving on to Chief Business Officer's recommendations.
Yes, I have one recommendation this evening. It is recommended the Board of Education approve purchase of 400 cases of paper from Sterling Distribution for $13,920.
I'll move.
Second?
We have a first and second. Any discussion?
Attached in the agenda is a memo that was typed up with all the pricing that went out for quote to the vendors. And we went with the distribution company that had one of the best prices for a product that we have used that we know works in the machine.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell?
Yes,
Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford?
Yes.
Mr. Fulton?
Yes.
Mr. Violi?
Yes, motion carried.
That
Move.
concludes my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Scarsapino. Moving on to item number 8, new business. Do we have any new business? And one of my favorite ones.
Old
is
business.
Old business. I will say that had much discussion over the sign for the front of the building over the last year. And I'm hopeful, based off of communication I had from city council, that they may be seeing something at the planning committee shortly or soon with a new sign ordinance. And I guess there's also some conversation that's been happening from some of the council members about the sign that's in the city square, that they may be putting something there once they get that new ordinance put through. But it has to go through planning and then it has to be presented to council. And I know that there's been some progress on that. And I just wanted to say to council and the city, thank you for their work on it. And we hope to see something very soon. So that's my old business. If anybody has any other old business or comments. Okay. And we're gonna move on to adjournment. Need a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grimm,
Yes.
Mrs. Bedford,
Yes.
Mr. Fulton,
Yes.
Mr. Viola.
Yes. Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you to our new board members as well. And thank you for your confidence in me, putting me as board president. So, I'm so thanks.
Yes.